A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Justice Awareness at Heartlands. Know Your Rights, Family Violence and Harassment Matters, jointly organized by SG Courts and supported by the Ministry of Social and Family Development, the Law Society of Singapore, Pro Bono SG, and PAVE Integrated Services Limited. My name is Yvonne and I will be your MC for today. The Justice Awareness at Heartlands series aims to provide useful and relevant information on specific judicial topics that the courts handle, and to increase awareness of court services that may be useful for you. Our topic today will cover what family violence and harassment by family members and or intimate partners means, and will cover legal and non-legal remedies that affected persons can consider. First, we would like to say a big thank you to all for submitting your questions earlier before today. Our speakers and panelists will try their best to answer all of them in the presentations and in the Q&A session. But if you still have any burning questions, please feel free to ask them during the Q&A session later. At this juncture, perhaps let me do a brief introduction of myself. I'm a court interpreter with the SG Courts for many years. And in my daily work, I have witnessed and helped many victims of family violence and harassment find justice in the court system. I hope that all of you here today will find this event interesting and useful, and that you will benefit from the knowledge shared by the speakers and our panelists today. Without further ado, it is now my pleasure to invite Registrar Family Justice Courts, Mr. Kenneth Yap, to deliver the opening remarks. Mr. Yap, please.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see everybody bright and early on a Saturday morning. My name is Kenneth Yap, and I'm the Registrar of the Family Justice Courts. And I'm delighted to welcome you today to the session for Justice Awareness at the Heartlands. And this initiative represents the Singapore Judiciary's ongoing commitment to bring legal awareness to the community and to enhance awareness of court services, as well as provide the necessary information for those who seek legal recourse. Now, since 2021, the Family Justice Courts, in collaboration with the Ministry of Social and Family Development, the Law Society, and the People's Association, have been conducting webinars and roadshows to enhance access to justice. Now, this year, our Access to Justice Division has broadened the program and renamed it Justice Awareness at Heartlands, which will holistically cover issues that arise in all three courts, namely the Supreme Court, the State Courts, and the Family Justice Courts. Now, through these efforts, we hope to strengthen the court's connection with the community and ensure that justice remains accessible to all. Now, today, we commence our series with the topic, Know Your Rights, Family Violence and Harassment Matters. This session addresses the right of all family members to feel safe and supported within their households. In this regard, it is vital to assist those who are facing or are at risk of facing domestic violence or harassment, to recognize the warning signs and understand the pathways to provide immediate and lasting protection. Now, to reinforce the protection framework, significant legislative amendments have been made. Of particular note is the recent amendment to the Women's Charter 1961, which broadens the definition of family violence and provides the court greater powers to intervene to put an end to domestic violence. Now, when harassment originates outside of the family context, the Protection from Harassment Act 2014, or POHA as we call it, applies to protection for victims. Having come into force since 2014, the POHA was amended in 2019 to cover all matters relating to harassment, stalking, cyberbullying, and other acts causing alarm or distress. And since 1st June 2021, a specialized POHA court has been set up in the state courts to hear all types of civil cases specified under the Act, and to further assist POHA applicants who have concurrent family proceedings. Since 2024, certain POHA applications can be heard at the Family Justice Courts if there are related family proceedings. This ensures that a litigant in distress will not have to pursue two separate legal applications. Now, our partners today, Ms Pang Kee Tai from PAVE, from PAVE, Ms June Lim, Managing Director of Eden Law Corporation, and Ms Amelia Ang, a partner with Lee & Lee, will share more about the nature of family violence and harassment and how to recognize signs of people at risk. They will discuss available remedies for affected persons. And understanding these options empowers individuals to make informed decisions and seek help through appropriate channels. I encourage you over the course of today's session to note down any questions that arise during the presentations, as we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. But for more complex queries, we have representatives from the Pro Bono SG, PAVE, the State Courts, and the Family Justice Courts on hand at the respective booths to provide further assistance. Our goal today is not just to share information, but also to strengthen the community's response to family violence. We hope to leave you with a clear understanding of your rights, the available support services, and practical steps for protection, and ensure that no victims of family violence or harassment have to suffer in silence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yap. This morning, we are very privileged to have with us three distinguished speakers who are very familiar with the topic of family violence and harassment. Our first speaker is Ms Pang Kee Tai. She is a Senior Deputy Director with PAVE, and she'll be speaking about the different forms of family violence and harassment and the non-legal remedies available. Ms Pang, please. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Wow, nice. Lovely to see so many people in the room today. And, we're very privileged, PAVE, to be here. We are in Ang Mo Kio and Yishun, two centers. And, we have a lot of partners who are working with us whom we feel very privileged to be part of, because family violence is a very, very complex problem, isn't it? So no one law explains, no one theory explains, no one experience is the same. So let me just dive straight in. If it is a once-off incident, it has to be very abuse to qualify for like a lot of intervention. But it is usually systematic patterns, that means repeated patterns of abuse that happens over time that becomes like, sorry to use the word, like a habit, right? It becomes a pattern of their behavior, and it is really used to control the other party. Okay, so I won't touch on the law, of course, because we have all the legal experts here, right? Generally, under the law right now, we group it under the three big areas, and they're very broad so that, a lot of definition can actually fall in. Because a lot of questions that were asked to us social workers is, how do you know this is violence? Does this constitute this violence or that violence? Okay, so we have to explain quite a bit. So why does Sally continue to stay in an abusive relationship? I'll just speed on lah. Okay, so you see the usual stuff. It's the effects of the abuse. There's guilt, there's subordination, there's children, there's everything. But all together, it does not mean that they don't love the other party. There's always a lot of love and hope that things could change, because there's such a thing called a cycle of violence. You saw that in Carl's story, Sally's story, that after the initial stage, when the relationship was going on, he will sometimes be very sweet, he'll apologize, he'll want to do things for her. And we see that a lot in our cases as well, in the families that we support. Okay, that there's a honeymoon period, and after that, it'll go back to the same cycle. But for us, right, once the violence starts, it doesn't stop. Generally doesn't stop. If there's the first time, there's the second time, there's the second time, there are many, many other times. And each time, it might just get worse. Okay? So this is what we call the continuum of violence. It usually starts with name calling, verbal abuse and all that. So we don't take that lightly whenever people call you shut up, whatever kind of stuff. Sorry, kids. So when they use verbal abuse, it doesn't mean that it is not, it's not something to be concerned about, because we know that there's a trajectory, there's a pathway for this kind of violence to happen. And it goes on to, pushing, slapping, shoving, beating, punching, hitting with objects, knives. And okay, we added these two in strangulation and stalking. Strangulation is a big thing because now it comes out in different languages. Oh, he put his hand around my neck. He put me in a chokehold. But it's arose by any other name. Strangulation is strangulation. It has every capacity to hurt and to kill. Because you cut off the oxygen supply, there's a lot of things that they may also forget when they black out. So some of our clients who come to us, they'll tell us, actually, I can't really remember. Because they black out at some points. And even if they don't black out, they can't really remember all the things that happened, largely because of this kind of situations. I'm not medical. I just gave a talk last night to some medical doctors, and they also agree with this. What were some of the formal systems? Okay, I just show you. Okay. 4 minutes. Okay. For Sally's situation, this is not all, right? There were 23 organizations altogether working with her and her family over a couple of years. In fact, the children are still pretty much known to us. What impact do you think that the witnessing has on the children? In fact, generally, they think that violence towards children, child abuse is child abuse, but actually witnessing violence, just observing, hearing, okay, and being told about it later on, seeing the police cars come to the house, all that can also be traumatic. Seeing the injuries, even though nobody talks about it, they can see the crying, they can feel the tension in the house. Our HDB houses are really small. If somebody say, hey, you think you're what? Oh, that kind of stuff, right? Or some of the couples tell us, actually, we're very careful, whenever we want to quarrel, we all go into the room and close the door. Then, after 2-3 hours of the silent arguing inside, supposing it's silent arguing, they come out, stares, glares, okay, tension in the air, nobody knows what's going, hey, that kind of stuff. So the poor children, they are experiencing all that. What happens to them? Sometimes they grow up, not all the time, but sometimes they grow up with a lot of complexities. Sometimes they go to school, they get bullied or they bully others, okay? Or they also have some of the other issues growing up. I won't call it anger management. Anger is a normal emotion that all of us have. It's what we do with the anger that's the issue. Okay. So this whole spectrum is not just spousal abuse. We have the child abuse, the elder abuse, the vulnerable adult abuse, sibling abuse, other abuse like, for example, in-laws and even grand-uncles, 3 generations coming to us for abuse across the generation. Okay. So what can we do as a family? If you're a friend who is here today, or a family, just listen and suspend judgment, because it's really difficult to understand. We can never, even as professionals who are trained in this, we cannot ever tell our clients that we understand. Like, we understand. We don't, okay, because we don't live in the house. Even if we watch through the CCTV, we really don't get it, right? So we listen, tell him or her that it is not his or her fault. Be there, because leaving a relationship, if at all there's a necessity for leaving, okay, it takes time. It takes planning. It takes a lot of strategizing, okay? But it's also the fact that not to give up, because a lot of times they tell us, I cannot go to my mother's house. I cannot go to whose house, because they won't understand. They will just tell me to go back. In fact, often that's what happens. They're told to go back to the same house where the violence has taken place. Okay, just encourage them to seek help, because it's not easy to help them, and it takes a lot of skills, right? Okay, what if you are the victim? If you need to know the warning signs, some of the coercive tactics there, okay, and some of the different your body knows it. Your body knows the count. Okay, talk to a trusted family or friend or employer. In fact, we've got employers. I'm speaking very fast without the commas. Okay, just watch me try. Talk to a trusted. Employers have brought employees in because for a couple of days they don't turn up at work. And then employers will call up, hey, I got an employee who hasn't been doing work, but I noticed from before. So this is really good when people are noticing that people around them, like bruises or sometimes looking very down and all that. And then they find out that it's a history of violence. They sometimes will bring them in. Seek help early. Again, it's the same thing. Okay? If you are the person who is using violence, right, there is always help. In PAVE, we believe that the person who uses violence is the most important person, in the sense that you are the only person who can stop the violence. It's your mouth, it's your hands, it's your legs. You are the only one who can stop it. The key message as a last thing is that family violence is complex, and therefore it also can have potential fatal outcomes. We can't treat it as family disputes, because we call it family disputes. We're saying it's interactional. That means you cause it, I cause it, it becomes like that. It doesn't work that way. It's the choice of the person who is using the violence to use it. Okay, it can happen to anyone, rich or poor, educated or not, and seek help early. And this is a quote we love from the former senior district judge that says, family violence is a complex criminal offense that has the seriousness of a stranger to stranger crime, but involves a victim and perpetrator who know and care for one another. So a person subject to family violence in the home is no less a victim than a person beaten on a sidewalk in front of the home. Okay, the law does not stop at the front door of the family home. So think about that. We're here today with a hopeful message that, if there's anybody out there who is going through that experience, either as a child witness, a vulnerable person, a survivor, or a person who is using abuse, there is help. Get it early so that, your family can experience the peace and the joy of family life and family equality. So thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms Pang, for the informative and engaging presentation. Thank you very much. So our second speaker is Ms June Lim. And Ms Lim is the Managing Director of Eden Law Corporation, and she'll be speaking on the Prevention of Harassment Act, or POHA in short, and the legal remedies available for harassment. Ms Lim, please. Ms Lim, thank you.
Kee Tai is a very hard act to follow, I must say, but I will try my very best. And also, I will try and keep this a bit short so that we will be able to have time to take questions. Okay, so this is, I will say, a much drier area of the law. Rather than family violence, I'm sure I don't have videos, I don't have photos. Yeah, so like I said, Kee Tai is a very hard act to follow. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about POHA, Protection from Harassment Act 2014. And I'm just going to give a very broad overview of what is available, what are the remedies, and what are some of the key takeaways from this. Broadly speaking, we're talking about harassment today, right? Broadly speaking, it is threatening, abusive, insulting words or behavior, using them, making them, and what is interesting, I would say, about POHA is that it targets a lot of the online harms. So stalking, cyber stalking, doxing, publishing personal data online with the purpose of attracting other people to harass. So that's something that POHA has as a feature, which I would say that the Women's Charter or the Family Violence doesn't have. And some of the remedies that are available under POHA, so there are criminal remedies, imprisonment up to 12 months, fine up to 5,000 or both. There's also civil monetary remedies, so for the harasser to compensate the victim where it's appropriate, and then also the civil non-monetary remedies, so to stop harassing behavior, to stop the spreading of these false facts online. And there are also mandatory treatment orders and things like that can be done. So these, broadly speaking, are the three types of remedies that are available under POHA. Okay, so the scope, I would say that POHA covers the two key takeaways I would think from today is the scope from under POHA is wider. Who can apply? So under the Women's Charter, you'd have to have a family relation. So spouses, ex-spouses, family members. But POHA, it's really anybody. And that is why POHA is particularly useful for intimate partner violence. So boyfriend, girlfriend, or strangers, workplace harassment, but anybody who doesn't have a family relation. And what is covered? So personal harassment under the Women's Charter, but personal and online harassment under POHA. So it has a bit of a broader scope. Okay, so the types of remedies are also slightly different under POHA. You get your criminal remedies, your protection order, counseling, treatment order, which some of it, you can get under the Women's Charter, your exclusion order. But monetary order, stopping the publication, correction orders, getting getting Facebook or whatever it is to disable the user access and things like that, those are only available under POHA. So I think if there's anything that you take away, I mean, we won't speak specifically to specific people's situations here, but if it is an unrelated person, then come under POHA. If it is an online thing, come under POHA. But everything else, I mean, the family violence does have a certain ecosystem in the family justice courts for this. Okay, so I mean, sometimes when we get clients that come and ask us about harassment actions and how to file them and stuff, these are the forms of evidence that you need to produce, because ultimately, to bring a complaint, whether it's in the POHA court or in the family justice courts, it is a court process. And you do need to show evidence of the harassment that has happened. And so that's why you start to, you need to keep emails, that you need to keep copies of the, screenshots of the website, video, audio recordings, CCTV footage of people stalking or lurking outside your door. And that's important. Photos, police reports, medical reports if you have been physically harmed. In any way. So these are things that are important. It's not enough to say that you are afraid or I'm not saying that it's not happening to you, but unfortunately as lawyers, we need to be able to advise. We need to take a look at the evidence that you're bringing forward, and especially, I mean, the courts will also need to assess the evidence that you're bringing forward of the harassment. So it's important to keep records. So anyway, top 3 harassment complaints, cyberbullying, doxing, workplace harassment. And some of this has come out in the Straits Times when we're talking about POHA, the POHA complaints and things like that. So it is becoming, I would say, more and more prevalent. Some of these are the stats that have been put up in the Straits Times. So there has been a bit of a climb, I think. But I do think that there also may be more complaints out there that people are not bringing to the courts because they feel that they may not have recourse. So if there's anything that you want to take away today to your friends, family members, that actually there are avenues for them to apply online, and they don't. I mean, you can engage lawyers to help you with your harassment complaints, but you don't. I mean, it's not a must. It actually the portal is quite user friendly. And it's meant for litigants in person to file online. And I mean, the judges in the POHA courts are very helpful. Also, they are, they're trained to deal with litigants in person bringing their complaints. So, that's really all I have to say about POHA. And I'm going to just pass the time on to Amelia.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lim. Thank you for the great presentation. I've learned so much more about POHA today. I'm sure you do too, right? So now our third and final speaker is Ms. Amelia Ang. Ms. Ang is a partner with Lee & Lee, and she will be sharing information on family violence and the legal remedies available. Ms. Ang, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, June, for giving me a lot of time for my presentation. Thank you for having me here today, everyone. For my presentation, what I hope to do is build on what I think Kee Tai and June has mentioned, because actually in their presentation, they've really covered quite a few aspects. So my role today is really to focus on the legal aspect of family violence, specifically the definitions, as what Registrar has mentioned, the expanded definitions of family violence, as well as the remedies available for those who are interested to know what these remedies are, because there are more such remedies since the beginning of this year. So today, I will try to go through some key areas, not too much, so that it's digestible for everyone. Focus on what family violence is, the definitions, who can get help, how to prove family violence in court, some of which I think June has already covered. There will be some similarities. And finally, what orders we can seek from the courts for protection. Okay, I hope to make this clear and simple so that you all can know your rights and either help yourself or the people around you. So next slide. Okay, so what is family violence? So family violence is when someone in your family hurts you or makes you feel unsafe. Okay, as what we have gone through earlier, it's really not just limited to physical abuse. So that's important to know. It really is not just pushing, it's not just hitting. Okay, it's sexual abuse as well, as you can see. And importantly, it's emotional, psychological harm. Okay, so let's go through this category. So physical abuse is clear. Just now we saw the Carl and Sally example, bruises and all that, spouses pushing each other during an argument. So that's quite straightforward. Okay, building on to that, not just causing, physical harm can be family violence, even threats. So bear in mind, even threats to cause personal injury or death can constitute physical abuse or wrongfully confining, restraining a person against the person's will. Okay, do note that it doesn't include behavior like lawful self-defense. Okay, if you're defending yourself in an argument or a quarrel, or reasonable discipline of a child. Okay, so for emotional or psychological abuse, so this is the new expanded category of violence. As defined, such abuse is conduct that's tormenting, intimidating, harassing, or distressing to a person. Okay, causing or expected to cause mental harm. So one of the illustrations given in the Women's Charter is this. For example, if a person often smashes furniture when he's angry, and this smashing of furniture causes his child to be distressed and in fear of personal injury, okay, under these new definitions, the person would have committed physical abuse as well as emotional or psychological abuse against his child. So what this means is that family violence may not need to be directed to that person to constitute family violence. So if your children witnesses, such behavior, that actually constitutes violence as well. Okay. Right. The other, I think, last point I want to highlight in this case is family violence doesn't need to be a course of conduct, something that you endure over time, months, years. With the new definitions, a single act or a single incident can constitute family violence. Okay, so we go on to the next slide. Okay, so I'll just go on briefly to explaining who is considered a family member, because this is family violence, right? So many of y'all might think it's immediate family, it's spouse, it's children, but actually the definition is wider than expected. So it's current and former spouses, so ex-spouses as well, children, adopted or stepchild, parents, biological adoptive parents, parents-in-law as well, okay, because it's by marriage, siblings, brothers or sisters. There are also broader categories of other relatives through marriage or adoption, who all in the circumstances should be regarded as a family member. Okay? And also another category is people who are incapacitated or infirm, but they live with you, for example, and they can be regarded as a family member for the purposes of understanding who a family member is. Okay? Okay, next slide. Okay, now we go on to who can apply for protection. Okay, so obviously, if you're 18 and above, you're mentally well, you can apply for protection, right, for yourself. Okay, if someone is under 18 years old, a child, okay, then who can apply for on their behalf would be a family member, a guardian, or a carer. Okay, then there are other, for example, people who are mentally incapacitated. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to apply for themselves, right? They're not in a position to do that. People like their donees under LPA, deputies, carers, family members, can apply on their behalf. Okay. So the last one, it's, you see this protector. So basically, there's a special category of persons called a protector, okay, from the social welfare who can step in to help. So all in all, this means that no one is really left without support. Okay, no matter the age or situation, anyone can apply. Next slide. Okay. So this is quite similar to what I think June has mentioned in her presentation when she explains what is the type of evidence to prove family violence. Very similar to POHA, because these are generally evidence that we use in court processes, to prove your case. So police reports, okay, filed for past, present incidents of family violence, they can serve as evidence. So reports can provide details of date, time, type of violence and all that. Do note that it will be important for the report to be made as close as possible to the incident so that, it will be considered contemporaneous evidence, right? Because you would have made the report when it's still fresh in your mind. So that would be good evidence. Next one will be medical reports. Witness statements of people, like for example neighbors, in the example given by Kee Tai earlier, neighbors who hear, shoutings or witnesses certain things, family members, friends, okay, all other witnesses. Obviously, evidence like photos, videos, even SMSs. Okay, some might think these informal sources of evidence can't be used. That's not true. We can use emails, we can use texts, all that type. Okay. Okay, now that we've talked about how to prove family violence, with all this kind of evidence, so what happens? Let's move on to the next step. What happens when someone brings their case to court? So you have already, kind of shared your story, proven your case, and, if the court is satisfied that, I think this is somebody who needs protection. So what are the orders that you can seek from court? Okay, so we'll go through some of the orders that are available under the Women's Charter. So the first one will be the primary order, which most people seek, which is the personal protection order. Stops the abuser from hurting you or your family. They can't hit, threaten, or get others to threaten you. Okay, this can be applied with or without the other orders. Expedited order, it's a temporary order, right, that usually the court grants, pending the hearing of the personal protection order. So it protects somebody in the interim. Okay. Domestic exclusion order is an order to exclude or restrict the other party from entering your home. Okay. Okay. And then for the next few orders, you would see that they are with effect from this year. So these are some new orders under the new Women's Charter. the amendments. So stay away orders. So, the other side is prohibited from entering or remaining in the area outside the home or other frequented place, right? No contact order. So the other person can't visit, can't communicate with you. Okay. Counseling order, which is very important because that really helps to support, the parties. An order for applicant, respondent, children, or family members to attend counseling programs. And then the mandatory treatment order, which is also a new one. It's an order for the respondent to undergo psychiatric treatment. Okay. So we've just covered a lot of the orders that the court can give. I'll just briefly go through this. I mentioned the protector earlier, special category of person. So there are some additional orders that a protector can apply for and also make. Okay, so a protector can actually also apply for electronic monitoring order, which is to track whereabouts of a respondent, assessment order to assess whether the person at risk of family violence, are experiencing family violence. Removal order, the protector can actually remove a certain family member, the protected family member, from his or her own home or other places. And the protector also has the powers to make an order, an interim order of about 14 days, if he or she is satisfied that the respondent will commit family violence against that family member. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so we've just covered many of these orders that are available under the Women's Charter. Now, so for orders like the ones I mentioned earlier, I just think I want to raise 2 points, which is the court needs actually 2 aspects to be fulfilled. Okay, first, the proof of family violence has happened or is likely happened, as we have discussed. So you must first prove that it has happened. Secondly, and importantly, the court must be convinced that the order is necessary to keep the person safe. Okay, just to give an example, somebody may be able to prove that, an ex-spouse, committed family violence against that person maybe a few months ago, before divorce proceedings took place. But say, months later, divorce has resolved, right? And there are no such further incidents anymore, right? The court may be of the view that is there still a necessity for such an order? Because it seems like, the risk is no longer there. Things have changed. Maybe parties have moved on and all that. So the need for this necessity, the second limb, is really to have a balance between protecting one's safety while balancing the need for fairness towards the other party. All right. Okay, so we're finishing soon. Time good. Okay, so just to highlight breach of orders, there are consequences. It is a criminal offense, a fine up to 10,000, imprisonment up to 12 months, or both. So if there is a breach of any orders, okay, the relief is to report to the police. Okay. Okay, so I'm at the end of my presentation. I hope I'm in good time. In summary, really, the Women's Charter is here to protect individuals, okay, within a family context, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, or sexual, sorry. It covers a wide range of family members. There's a very broad definition. It's important for one to give strong evidence to prove the case. And once the case is proven, there are really quite a lot of reliefs and orders that's available. So if you or someone is experiencing family violence, please don't stay silent. Okay, there's a lot of help available. Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ang, for the wonderful presentation, which provided us a lot of useful information. Thank you once again to all 3 speakers. After listening to the 3 very interesting presentations, I'm sure you must have many questions on your mind. And now we will have our Q&A session. May I please invite on stage the members of the panel, Mr. Kenneth Yap, Registrar of Family Justice Courts, Mr. Edwin Sun, Registrar State Courts, Ms. Tan Shin Yi, Judicial Head of Court of Protection, Family Justice Courts, and our 3 speakers, Ms. Pang Kee Tai, Ms. June Lim, and Ms. Amelia Ang. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, during the registration process, we had asked the registrants to submit any questions they might have. And we have since received a list of these questions and passed them on to the speakers, who have incorporated some of the answers into their presentations earlier, and hope some of your questions have already been answered. And as we begin our Q&A session, if you would like to ask any more questions, please raise your hand. My colleague will then pass the mic to you. And for the benefit of all participants, may I request that you limit your question to one at a time, and also not to provide personal information or facts of your own case, as this is not a legal consultation. If you have a burning question but are too shy to ask openly in court, not to worry. You may scan the QR code on the screen to ask your question via the Mentimeter. And if you are not comfortable speaking in English, also not to worry. You can choose to speak in Mandarin, Malay, or Tamil, and our interpreter colleagues will interpret for you, including myself. So thank you. Let's start the Q&A session now. Please feel free to ask any questions. Thank you. Mr. Yap, you can moderate the session. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I'll allow one question from the Mentimeter. And this one deals, I think, more with POHA. And the question reads, is there any court order for preventing the other party from accessing my electronic devices and personal belongings which have important data? Any court order to prevent access of my electronic devices and personal belongings? June or Edwin, you like to take
accessing other people's personal data and phones and laptops and things like that is more of a crime, a computer hacking into this, a computer misuse act issue more than a POHA issue. But I'm sure there are also very challenging things that are happening in the home that require, that's why these things are happening. And that you have actually said that, you don't want him to touch your belongings and things like that, and that you find this to be harassing. So if it's not a family member situation, if it's a family member situation, it could potentially be filed in the family court. But if it's an unrelated person, like a tenant or somebody else that's in the house, then I would definitely do the POHA thing.
And more broadly speaking, one of the orders that can be made is a stop publication order. But I think if it's within the laptop, But I think it goes in the state where at least there must be some form of publication. But if it's just within the laptop and accessing, that's a different form of mischief. Yeah.
Actually, broadly speaking to the lady's question as well as I think the other questions, I think what we are presenting here today are legal remedies, right? And there are so many different ways that if one person wants to torture another person or harass another person, there's so many, many different ways, and the law sometimes cannot even keep up with the different ways that people come to torture each other. But what I wanted to say is that with Kee Tai, social workers will work with families, with situations. So the avenues, so what we are presenting to you today are the legal things that you can do through the court. But there are also many different non-legal ways that we can manage problems within a family, within different relationships. And that's where really social workers are helpful to diagnose the problem. So the problem is there, but the solution may not always be legal. Okay.
So perhaps I can just use this opportunity just to say a bit more about the POHA courts. And the POHA courts was set up in 2021, and it's actually part of the district courts, part of the state courts. And the POHA courts actually has both civil and criminal jurisdictions. So I think if you saw the video before we started this session, there are essentially three courts in Singapore, right? There's the Supreme Court, which is located at the Padang, near the Padang, and then we have the family justice courts and the state courts, which are essentially located in the Chinatown area. And there's an MRT station, which makes it very accessible. So for the POHA courts, there's both criminal and civil jurisdiction. For offences which are under the POHA, including harassment, if the prosecution decides to prosecute a person, that will be a proceeding under the criminal aspect that will be done in the POHA courts. But there is another aspect which is more of the civil side, where very common remedy sought is a protection order, right? And a protection order, I think we have made it such that after this, you can go to the booth. You can apply for one online using our CJTS system, which is a web-based system accessible through your SingPass, right? So that is the all these initiatives and options that are out there if you need to explore. Right. Thank you.
And there's a question here about domestic exclusion orders. So the question is, if a domestic exclusion order is given, where would the respondent stay? If he's out on the street, will he cause problems to society, and is there a shelter for him? Maybe this one I'll again direct to Kee Tai, who has more experience in these practical matters.
If they sleep on the street, then MSF will have people pick them up, right? Actually, there are always two sides of the story, right? So whenever a DEO is applied for, then the first thing we think about is where can the person go? Because if they don't have a place to go, they will always be juggling outside the door. They hang around, they'll stalk. That may not always make it much easier or safer, but definitely is a good time and a breathing space for the family that the person is removed from. So usually even before this, right, we sometimes see in situations where there isn't even a DEO, it's the victims and the children who run out and try to find places. So you think in terms of numbers, right, the ratio will be like there'll be more survivors and children sometimes running around looking for friends, bunk from 1 week here, 1 week there, cannot stay too long, then go. So for the respondents, for example, the persons who are abusive, whose the DEO is given, oftentimes if they are already known to an agency or like a counseling order is given and they're known to social workers, then we will normally explore with them kinship care. I mean, as in, do you have like a friend or whatever? Because there are 4 shelters in Singapore for victims. But in terms of the shelter for guys, MSF has made provision for that because they are cognizant of the fact that there are places where men cannot really go because the shelters are mainly for women and children under certain age, right? So there are provisions for men who may need temporary shelters. So if there's a need for that, then they can always approach the social workers or the MSF, okay, and that can be provided for. Would that be correct? Correct. Thanks. Getting nods from Siu Fong, my colleague up there.
Would child correction, that means if you punish the child, be an exception to what constitutes family violence? And what is reasonable in terms of child correction, especially given different parenting styles across generations? And I think a related question also is, are youths allowed to apply for PPO against their families? Specifically, the youth is 16 or 17 years old. So a double barrel question on what is reasonable for child correction, which is actually a textbook answer. And the other one is, can youth apply?
Answer the first one first, I suppose. Okay, I mean, that is a common question when clients come to us because, for example, usually in very acrimonious divorce proceedings, sometimes husband and wife will start to find fault with each other, right? And then they'll say, you actually abused the child and all that. Sometimes it's a stepping stone for divorce proceedings when they want to wrestle care and control and custody and all that. So, the cases, the courts have actually appreciated that, when it comes to child correction, they try to accommodate culture differences, parenting styles and all that. But at the same time, there are acceptable limits, right? We try to accommodate, but acceptable limits. But the question will be, what are those limits? So it'll be reasonable discipline. So first aspect is whatever you do to the child must be for the purposes of discipline. Okay, so if you're lashing out because, maybe the child makes you angry and then you get really angry because kids can be very mischievous, right? If you lash out, so that's not exactly to correct the child because you're actually venting your anger to the child. The other aspect is proportionality of the misbehavior. So if the child, there was this case where I think the father was just very upset with the child because he came home, child was rude, didn't greet him. He belted the child, quite a few strokes. Okay, in that case, the court found that it's not proportional. So, in a sense, yes, we don't have very clear this 2 canes means yes, acceptable, 3 canes means no. We don't have that, but we have this broad parameters of what is lawful correction of a child. Okay, so that's the first question. For the second question, Registrar, was about the youth.
About whether the youth can apply as a 16, 17-year-old against his family. for family violence.
I think he would still have to find someone to apply on his behalf. Yes.
So, yeah, let me answer. The question is, the threshold is 18 years old. So if over 18, the youth can apply. Below 18, the parent or somebody from the family will apply on his behalf.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question here, which is quite interesting because it's a cross between both POHA and PPO. So the question is, what should one do if the abuser files a POHA against me when he is the one who is harassing me and I have a PPO against him, and further he's the father of the child and divorce proceedings are ongoing? Okay, so if divorce proceedings are ongoing, there's already a PPO granted and POHA is filed. So what do you do then? Do you have to fight the matter in?
There's a pending related family proceeding in FJC. If there is also a POHA matter, then both can be dealt with in family court. So if, for example, the abuser has already filed the POHA matter in the state courts, but we are aware that there's a related matter in family court, the state courts can transfer the POHA matter over for family court to deal with everything together.
That's an interesting question on workplace and POHA. Okay, so the question is, does workplace isolation, in other words, being ostracized at one's workplace for whatever reason, constitute harassment under POHA? I think it's an interesting question to ask about whether workplace issues can constitute POHA.
Okay, I think the approach for harassment is that there is a High Court case that clearly says that for harassment, we got to take a common sense approach. There's no one definition on it. So it will really turn on the case by case and the evidence that is presented. Generally, I suppose conduct that is calculated to cause distress, prolonged, it can potentially come as harassment. But in this workplace situation, it really depends on the full context of how this person is being harassed. I mean, there are so many permutations. So there is no one definition. But I think I suppose if you feel that you are being harassed at work, it is potentially you can file an application under the POHA. Yeah.
Thank you very much to our panelists. Yes, may I invite you to go back to your seats? Thank you very much for the insightful and engaging session, and I'm sure all of you have enjoyed the session very much. I do. Right, and with this brings us to the end of the Q&A segment. Please join me in thanking the panelists, Mr. Kenneth Yap, Mr. Edwin Sun, Ms. Tan Shin Yi, Ms Pang Kee Tai, Ms June Lim, and Ms Amelia Ang. Thank you very much for the wonderful sessions. And as with every event, we are constantly looking for ways to improve and do better. And we would love to have your feedback. And also, if you have feel that we have done well, please drop us a note too. And this will greatly encourage us. Please do drop us a note to let us know. So we really appreciate it that you can scan the QR code here on the screen to provide your feedback and your comments. Thank you very much. And that's leaves me to say, you have been a group of a wonderful audience this morning. And thank you very much for your participation and attending the event. And right now, sadly to say, we have to say our goodbyes. But before we go, our partner agencies, PAVE and Pro Bono SG, as well as our very own state courts and family justice courts, have set up the booths outside the auditorium. So please feel free to visit them, and especially just now, there are some topics that you would want to know more. Please visit our booths to know more information. Okay, thank you very much once again, everyone. Take care of yourself and have a good weekend. Thank you very much. Thank you.